Okay, now what is your, this is the time when you get to brag. What do you think is your most brilliant or elegant choice in translation, or maybe some piece if you don't remember a particular linguistic term, like something you think you rendered beautifully?
Well, I'm going to try to explain this one, not too, without going into too much detail, but I talk about it in the introduction to my book of the translations from Alexander Weitzman. I got the whole idea of translating his poetry from hearing him in a public reading,
Mm-hmm.
and he translated. He had written a poem in Russian that used the phrase "птичья гамма," so the scale, musical scale of a bird.
Mm-hmm.
But what I recognized it as a incomplete allusion to this phrase "птичий гам," which was used by Tyutchev in his poem "Весенняя гроза," Spring Tempest. So I thought to myself, it would be impossible to translate that phrase into English while communicating to the target audience who didn't know Tyutchev what was the point of combining those two words in Russian. So I was really proud of myself when I found a way to do it. And the way I did it was that there was a 6 foot 12 syllable line in Weitzman's original, which I managed to condense into 6 syllables. I mean, into half the length, and that left me 12 syllables to communicate "птичий гам." So the 2 lines, which in Russian had used "птичья гамма," I rendered in English as "and Mozart scales the clouds like birds that keep on singing in a springtime tempest."
Wow, that reads beautifully. I like that you worked Mozart into it.
Yes, well, he had Mozart in the original.
Oh, he had Mozart. Okay, good.
Yeah. How did he put it? И Mozart полетает, рассекая облака. No, а Mozart в птичьей гамме летает вверх, something like летит вверх, рассекая облака, something like that. And I went back to the Tyutchev original, which said "В лесу не молкнет птичий гам." So in the forest, the din of birds does not fall silent, even though there's a storm on the way. So I wanted to communicate that that persistence of song, because it's part of the theme of the poem, in my view. So.
Yes, alas, I worry we will never argue too much, because we're poetic translators, and so we have that same wavelength. We understand each other. Anytime you solve a poetic riddle in poetry or songs, it's kind of an interesting dilemma, and it's not dilemma, but it's a creative solution every time.
It is.
I don't know one particular that I'm super proud of, except every time I translate a poem or a song. But maybe one interesting challenge was, Pushkin has this poem called Exegi Monumentum, which means in Latin, myself a monument I built. And I have this translation. And me being me, I wrote a poem of 11 stanzas like that about myself once. And then I had to prepare it for a book, which was getting published in the morning, and this was night. And the publisher was like, "Vladimir, you have 1 hour or in 10 minutes. So I translated this 11 stanza poem of my own in 1 hour. So I had to. There was no other choice. Yeah. Okay. So what is your? I think I know this one. What is your pet peeve in translation?
I'm curious. What do you think I would say into this?
The противоречие and contradiction.
Oh yes, yeah. The false cognates in general. false cognates between Russian and English,
Yeah.
because I think that a lot of translators, even good ones, it's like they don't think that Russian and English have false cognates between them. Spanish English translators are very, very keen to this kind of thing, as well as French English, but Russian English, they kind of forget the meanings of words in English, and they'll just translate, like, adekvatность, for example. Several translators I know who are good ones would translate that as adequacy, even though
doesn't even remotely work. Okay, yeah, so I'm thinking translation basically would be your pet peeve, like not being thoughtful enough.
Right, especially the false cognates.
They exist all over the place. I keep finding new ones for myself. Like I think I told our listeners, but I recently realized that cynical, which would not seem like a false cognate, actually has different nuances in English and in Russian. It's much more harsh in Russian because it means like basically violating or flaunting the norms, the morals, etc. And in English, it just means more like skeptical and not believing them, so it's not the same thing.
Right. You could even say it in an affectionate way in English, like just describing it as just a neutral personality trait. Well, yeah, she's kind of cynical, but she has a good heart. Whereas in Russian, you can't be cyniczny and have a good heart.
No. Okay, good. We're close to the end. So next one, besides yourself, and you don't have to name me, but who is your favorite translator or your favorite translation, and why?
Well, besides you, Vladimir, I would have to give a nod to our mutual colleague, Lydia Razran-Stone, who is she was a Russian English grader for a long time, and along the way she translated many books of prose and poetry, and she just has a way, especially of perceiving humor in a Russian original, and making it fresh and sparkly in English, communicating it effectively.
I've never really read many of Lydia's. I know her personally, but I haven't read her. So I once, quote unquote, accused her of publishing a great book of Russian idiom translations into English, and she said this wasn't me, but it was this amazing book of somebody who actually poetically and rhythmically translated a lot of Russian idioms, and I don't know who it was. I thought it was Lydia, but she said it wasn't. Anyway, and okay, my turn. Besides you and besides Rick, who's actually turning into quite an amazing translator, I would probably say there's this, you probably know this lady. She's called the mother of the Little Prince in Russian, Nora Gal, and she was a French into Russian, English into Russian translator, but she also has an amazing book about maintaining the purity and the beauty of the language. So I learned a lot from her. All right, so here's $1 million question. We talked a lot about the ideal interpreter in previous webinars. What would be the ideal translator of modern times and the future?
That's a really good question. And in order to give a complete answer to that, I would have to talk about the influence of AI on translation, but I don't want to get into that today. That would be a whole other webinar. But given that AI is becoming so powerful in processing language, I would only say that the translator of today and of the future needs to be familiar with the capabilities of AI, so he or she can use it effectively, especially when under time pressure.
Do you use it?
Yeah, I do sometimes.
We found one point to disagree on.
Well, in the kind of translations that you do for a living, Vladimir, AI would be almost useless because they require so much creativity. But in the nonfiction journalism world, there is some application for it. But anyway, I would just say that contemporary translators should know the capabilities and the limitations of AI, so that we know where there's there's an enormous role still, and a central role for the human being in translation. So we have to be able to stand up for ourselves as human beings to clients who might expect that, well, you can just feed those 300 pages into a machine and you'll get back a book in another language. We have to educate our clients that is not the case. But we also have to be able to, to sort of take the tiger by the tail and deploy AI when we see we can.
Now, what does the idiom "take the tiger by the tail" actually mean?
It means that if you imagine AI as the tiger, it's a powerful force that if you get on the wrong side of it, it could eat you alive.
Right, makes sense.
So to take the tiger by the tail means to not to run away from the force, but to get yourself in an advantageous position in relation to that force, and then to use its force to your advantage.
You're probably cleverer than I am, or more with the times, because I'm still trying to stick to the old-fashioned ways. We never use AI. Well, to some degree, I use Google dictionaries and all sorts of resources, but not machine translation as such. But yeah, we won't open up that bag of snakes, not even worms today. Right. But actually that segues right into maybe my definition of ideal translator, because if you have to explain to a client why you and not a machine, you have to make a really good case for it, because machines can faithfully translate, straightforward text, and their databases keep growing and growing and growing. So I think my description would be very, very erudite in both languages, the target language and the source language, knowing all the nuances, all the definitions, so that you can perceive the puns, you can create the puns, you can play with the style, you can play with the register, and you can do things that machine translations can't do. And the one thing they will never do, and is basically what artists and poetic translators have to do, is sort of breathe life into auditor into a translation, just sort of magically go, I think a machine translation will never translate Pushkin or Byron. They might linguistically, they might be taught to rhyme, but they're not people. And there's something that differentiates us from people. There's a question to Larry. Let me read it real quick. When you say AI, do you mean machine translation, or more than that?
Well, I mainly mean a combination of machine translation, which is just like Google Translate, feeding your words into one window on the left side and having them come out on the right side. So that's part of it. But there are also computer-aided translation tools which allow for interaction between the human being and an automatically generated translation. So so when it comes to AI, I mean both of those things. And I also have in the back of my mind the upcoming up and coming ChatGPT, which can actually produce language on demand without having a source text. You can just give it instructions. Write me a 1,000-word essay on such and such, and you could even say, in the style of whoever, Gavril Dzержavin.
I don't know how it does it. I don't know much about the program, but you have to know your enemies, I guess.
Yeah, you should know your enemies. Exactly. And they can become your friends.
That's true. I thought of something clever to say, but I forgot. Anyway, okay. Next question. This is kind of fun. What ability or skill, even supernatural, would make you 10x or 100x the translator, the god of translation? Not that you aren't already, but if you could have any one quality, what would it be? I know mine.
Knowing every language on earth.
That's awesome. All you would have to be is the devil.
Being able to understand everything, and read every alphabet, every character system, and also know the meanings and cultural backgrounds of them all. But that would be my my unachievable dream.
That's awesome. A pipe dream. See, pipe dream, голубая мечта, not literal.
I like that.
Yeah. But you're fluent in Russian, English, Italian, and Spanish, right?
Yeah, fairly fluent. Yeah.
And Hebrew too, or no?
I can sound it out
Hmm.
slowly, but I don't know what all the words mean. And
That's okay.
my son is teaching me Arabic very slowly.
Oh wow. Alexander knows Arabic?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, he
Nobody.
studied Arabic in college.
Wow. That's actually a point. You just mentioned it. I want to mention it for our listeners because I was having a discussion with this girl, also a linguist, and she said, well, sometimes I don't know words in Russian, and she's a native Russian speaker. And I mentioned this native speaker of English who thought it was mute point. So there's no shame to not know words in your native language, nor does it in any way defy or detract from your quote unquote nativity. Of course, I don't mean nativity, your nativeness, you know?
Right,
It's
nativeness.
okay. Yeah, I was just kidding. So mine would be similar. If you remember the Matrix and how Neo was learning at like lightning quick speed, he was learning all sorts of skills like Kung Fu and this and that. So mine would be to learn incredibly swiftly, which is similar. Not necessarily know the result, but be able to learn it as fast as you can. Okay, 2 more questions, and then I'm afraid we'll have to say our farewells. But this one is a fun one. What is the true beauty of translation? Why do you love lady translation so much?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that one. I've been thinking about that one a lot. It's something miraculous. I mean, even the ability to to have language as a human being, that's already miraculous. But to think that there's an active communication that you can perform with certain words in a certain language, let's say Russian, and you can in effect perform the same active communication, get the same meaning across, even if you change every single word in that original Russian utterance and put it into a different language, whether it be French or Spanish or English, and the reader or the listener is at least in my imagination going to get the same message from it.
Hopefully.
They'll be able to learn how to use the same tool if it's a procedural instruction. They're going to understand and maybe agree or disagree with the same argument, the same line of reasoning if it's that kind of a text. And that to me is just the most amazing thing. And I just feel like I have to be part of that.
It's magic.
It is magic. Magical translation.
We're magicians. Now, go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, so I will never get tired of it.
That's awesome. Why did you become a translator, not an interpreter, not both?
Because
it's an unfair question. It's unplanned.
Because I can sometimes think fast, but I always talk slow. So I could never keep up.
So you would be a good candidate for simultaneous interpreters. They would love interpreting you. That's not actually true. I think that's a misconception that a slow speaker is a good speaker. I wouldn't agree. But anyway, that's a whole different bag of cats or worms or whatever. Okay, should I answer the same question?
Yeah, please.
I mean, it would be similar because I think it's magic. I think to some degree it's a combination of technology and art, because there are all these tools to be precise, but it's not just tools, it's also artistic in many ways. And the more, of course, you move in the direction of art like poetry and songs, the more artistic it is. But even in quote unquote tedious translations like legal or medical, you have the ability to put beauty of style and language. That's actually why I decided to take this book, Business IQ. At the beginning, I didn't want to because I wasn't super interested in the subject. And then I was like, okay, the one task I'm going to perform for the author is render it as beautifully into English as I possibly can. So I think it's art in many, many ways. And I never get tired of doing song or poetry translations because it's a challenge every time. It's the rhyme and the rhythm and the tone and the meaning. So it gets your mind working. Before you came here, I told people of this rather sad interpreting job I had this week where a Cuban immigrant, I had to interpret for a Cuban immigrant, and he basically had like almost complete dementia. He just remembered his name, but nothing else. But when people like my mom or like you or me use our minds, that also keeps us, you know, sane and on the ball. I think that's really important. But anyway.
Yes, indeed.
Okay. Last question, unless we have some from the audience. One farewell wish or sage piece of advice for the translators, or let's say in general, the linguists in this audience.
Well, before I get to that, I just saw in the chat that Natasha had clarified her question about AI to mean not machine translation, but translation memory. And translation memories are very useful in that they remember what you have approved as the translation of a given segment of text, usually a sentence. And so there are these bilingual databases that you build up as you use a computer-aided translation tool. So those can be very useful if you tend to translate the same types of texts over and over again, like legal contracts. Translation memories can really be your friend. So
no, that makes sense. But I would play devil's advocate here again and say that the same term or phrase will not always, not even in the same context, be translated the same. And we've had this happen in our books, maybe 90% of the time, but not 100%. You know, I have to defend.
This is true, but translation memories don't. They're different from terminology bases, you know, which are the more sort of old-fashioned translator's friend, sometimes a false friend. But translation memories retain whole stretches of text, so you see the context as well as each word.
Nice. Okay, so what would be your one sage piece of advice or anything, a wish to? Let's separate this actually into two categories. What would you say to beginning translators?
I would say, again, about AI, don't be intimidated by AI. Don't think you're going to become obsolete, because the human being will always be at the center and really at the driving wheel of translation. That is not going to change, no matter how much language we process with machines. Cars get more and more sophisticated. They talk to us, they steer themselves, whatever. But I believe that there should always be a driver at the wheel of a car. And then the other thing for translators with any level of experience, I would say always don't belittle your role in the world. You're not just a go-between. You are a vital link in the chain of communication, worldwide communication. There's so much learning and knowledge that could not have taken place without translation. From Greek tragedies to mathematical formulas to philosophy, it's all most of what we know of those things from other countries comes from translation. So always remember your important role in moving the world forward.
I agree.
What about you, Vladimir? What would be your words of wisdom too?
Yeah, but see, now this is going the wrong way because we're agreeing again. No, I'm just kidding.
And too bad we agree on so much.
I would just like to add to this that, the not belittling your role also goes hand in glove with being very competent at the job, because it's the difference between a good translator or a bad translator, actually, not just good, but a great translator that makes all the difference. And then we don't get things like Moses with horns or Khrushchev's statement as we'll bury the United States, or other bad things that have transpired because of mistranslation. But there's a lot of beauty in translation. So my advice, I don't know, am I entitled to give advice, but I'll try. One, I would say, like at anything, never ever be a dilettante, but be a professional. Like hold yourself to the highest standards in the profession, even if it's a hobby, even if it's a hobby for you, even if you're retired, even if you just do it on your spare time. if you do it, you're a professional at it. And like every single nuance is important, and never stop learning. But also, like Larry said, it's very important, and keep finding the magic in it. Maybe keep finding the projects you love or you like. And yeah, just I think nothing in this world warrants doing if it's not fun. So have fun with it. Well, I'm afraid this is almost a record length webinar, but so unless we have other questions, we thank you, Ingrid. Thank you, that were awesome. And don't be afraid to make up words there. Amazing is my word. And in Katya's book, did I tell you about this, Larry? We made up, okay, I have to tell you about this because this was a brilliant solution. Zaryadka is a very common word in English, right? It's the morning flexibility routine to warm up for the day, but this sounds so horrible in English. And it's not a warm up, and it's not a workout, and it's not just a flexibility routine. So we just came up with the word charge up, your morning charge up. And we defined it in the book, and we even surveyed it because Katya was afraid the American audience wouldn't understand. And I said, yes, they will. But she said, can we check? I said, okay, anything for you, let's check. And they did. Like we surveyed 100 people, and like 80 or 90% said, yeah, it makes total sense.
Wow, I like it.
So yeah.
Definitely works for me. Well, thank you so much, Vladimir, for inviting me to come.
Oh no, thank you, because you've saved these people from hearing 100% of Vladimir. I've been babbling on to Babylon all this time, and now they heard your wisdom as well.
And thank you to Rick for the technical assistance.
Indeed, indeed.
And thank you to everybody for attending.
Yes. All right, Larry, I'll see you at Rustica sometime.
Yes, I'll send you an invitation.
Not goodbye, everybody, but so long. See ya.
So long.